All right, outrage this morning over Louis Farrakhan's seat of honor at the pulpit of Aretha Franklin's funeral.
The very controversial Nation of Islam leader, who has notoriously declared the Jews are my enemy and white folks are going down, was seated prominently alongside former President Bill Clinton.
Well, Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz joins us now to react, and he has been a very consistent critic of Farrakhan and his rhetoric and his actions over the years. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. I am really trying hard to figure out why President Bill Clinton, who I like, would do something like this, would help mainstream a bigot like Farrakhan. After all, Farrakhan has not only attacked Jews, he's also called Hillary Clinton a wicked woman. He compared her to Hitler. He's made some of the most outrageous statements in the world. And the question I would ask President Clinton if I were with him would be, would you sit next to David Duke? If he had been invited to a funeral of some white singer somewhere in the United States? And of course the answer would be no. And Farrakhan is every bit as bad as Duke. In fact, he has a larger following. Farrakhan has posed with President Obama. He's posed with Keith Ellison. He's posed with other leaders, both black and white. And you just can't mainstream and allow legitimacy to a man who has expressed the kind of hateful views he's expressed of Jews, of white people, of gays, of so many other people. So the question I put to President Clinton is why. Maybe his answer is, look, he didn't know it was a funeral. He wanted to show respect. He didn't want to get up and protest. I would understand all of that. But he has some explaining to do.
What about the question? What about the question to the elites of our country, to the media, who this is not a story? They're not blinking an eye when, like you said, if the converse would be the case, say President Trump was 3 seats down from an avowed racist, they would talk about it for a month. What does it say about our elites that this is nothing to them?
Well, I think some people think there is an affirmative action program, and the standard for criticizing black bigots is somewhat different than the standard for criticizing white bigots. That's unacceptable. You can't have affirmative action for bigotry in this country. You know, there are some who say, particularly on the left, well, we need the support of Farrakhan. He brings with him lots and lots of voters. There's no justification for that. Bigotry should know no toleration at all. And so I'm hoping we'll hear a good explanation from President Clinton. President Clinton's a good man. I can't imagine him being happy sitting next to a man who's called his wife a wicked woman and compared her to Hitler.
Exactly.
So this is a situation where I think he found himself. And I'd like to know when he learned. I'd like to know who invited Farrakhan. I know there was a relationship 30 years earlier between Farrakhan and Aretha Franklin, but, you know, I don't know whether that relationship continued or whether the family invited him. But I think any president should have said, no, if you want me on the stage, you can't have a bigot like Farrakhan sitting next to me.
Professor, let's move on to another controversy. The president was tweeting this week about Bruce Orr and saying, why in the world does this man still have a job at the Justice Department? Seems like a fair question. There have been people who have been dismissing the Orr story as sort of a Fox News distraction. And then I wake up this morning and see the front, or I don't know if it's on the front page, but inside the paper of the New York Times, Bruce Orr, big story that it turns out that this Justice Department official was working with others in the Obama administration to try and flip a Russian oligarch, not just any oligarch, but one known as Putin's oligarch, to try to get dirt on Manafort and candidate Donald Trump. What in the world is going on here?
Well, first, there's nothing wrong with trying to flip an oligarch, nothing wrong with trying to flip a witness if they could get him to provide information. I think the big story is that they couldn't flip him, and he wouldn't provide the information, and that was not told to the FISA court. The FISA court only was told the positive, not the negative aspects. Look, I want to presume or innocent until I hear evidence to the contrary. For me, the question that is raised most seriously is why he invited his wife to attend a lunch, which was supposed to be kind of for information gathering for the Justice Department, when he knew his wife was working as a private contractor for a private company that was working for one political party.
This was a lunch with Christopher Steele, right?
Yeah. And I think that's a question that the Inspector General of the Justice Department should be putting to Orr. But I want to presume him innocent. Everybody tells me he's a very decent professional guy, but he, too, has some questions to answer.
So we also learned that Bruce Orr kept Andrew Weissman abreast of the fake dossier, giving him updates. And then Andrew Weissman ended up on Mueller's special counsel team. Do you think that's a conflict of interest?
No, I don't see that as a conflict of interest. I mean, Weissman, I've known Weissman. I've argued against him. He's a very distinguished prosecutor. He plays very, very rough. But Justice Department share information of this kind. I don't see that as a conflict. I see the potential conflict of sharing information with his wife, who was a private citizen, working for a private company funded in part by Democrats. That's where I see the conflict.
Thank you, Professor. Appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.